Welcome, Tiny. I want to
Yes.
thank you for joining the Welfare Warriors for our International Women's Day celebration. Today, we're going to be talking about children and adults being stolen from their families for profit, for money, for the corporate world that we're so forced to live under.
Mm.
And starting with tell us what your group. I know that you're a co-founder of Poor Magazine, and you're located in Oakland, California, correct?
Yes.
And so tell us how you founded your particular group and some of the work that you do.
Okay. Well, I always start with a prayer. So laying down prayers, especially as a poor woman and a poor single mama, but also for Mama Earth. Right now in this occupied Turtle Island area that we're calling from, which is the village of Uchin, Ohlone Lishan land. And then I know you're in so-called Wisconsin, which is more stolen indigenous territory. So just sending out love and prayers and for our ancestors, for which out whom there be no us. Also, I always start with verse. I am a poverty scholar, that houseless mama, that houseless daughter. I'm a poverty scholar. All those people you don't want to see, never want to be, look away from me. What you going to do? Arrest me? We're in your city. And I rock my jailhouse attire because me and my poor mama did jail time in this occupied indigenous holler for the poverty crime of being unhoused. So yeah, I always say, see that houseless mama and daughter sleeping in a tent? That's because we don't got money for the rent. In my particular story or her story, it began with me and mom, and mom was a mixed race orphan. She was tortured in racist uh, and classist orphanages in Philly. She's Boricua and Roma, and was an unwanted child, which is one of the most dangerous things to be, really.
Really? Yep.
Yeah, her body was abused over 210 times by the time she was 3 years old,
Mm.
used in every way. And that she kept on keeping on is the story of our mamas, right? As sometimes people call it resilience when they're talking about us poor folks, but I say we just put on our clothes and keep it moving, and maybe we keep on surviving. That was my ma, and eventually she, remade herself, got with my white dad, and had me, and well, all that sadness went by, and she ended up the victim of domestic violence, and we ended up on the street when I was 4. But she got on welfare, and she struggled by any means necessary, and eventually got a job off of welfare and was practicing family restoration, which is the opposite of family separation, in a closed group home for poor girls like herself. And white psychologist fired her because it was against the mandate of the state. It's really interesting. These are all tied in. Anyway, when I was 11 years old. We ended up on the street. My mom was unable to keep it on at that point. She became disabled. She became lost in her trauma. And yeah, we did not make it. We ended up sleeping in our car, in bus benches, park benches, wherever we could, be without being seen. Sometimes we were lucky enough, we'd get a hoopty, a car to sleep in until it was towed. And that continued until I was 18, when I actually, we did a micro business to survive, me and mom. She was an artist too. And so we sold things on the street to get, nickel and diamond. Um, and then when I was 18, I ended up getting arrested and doing 3 months in Santa Rita County Jail for the act of being houseless, which I don't have to tell you as a warrior. Well, for warrior, it's illegal to be houseless in this occupied land. There's over 284 settler colonial laws on the books. But what's really interesting and important, especially because of your theme today, is when I was 11 and 12 and we were houseless in LA, we were sleeping in a tent, and the police came and did a sweep, which they do all the time. Sweep using hygienic metaphors about our bodies because we're outside. equating us with trash, and took all our belongings and then took me to foster care, said that my mama was unfit to be my mom. And I ended up staying in that foster home for over 3 months because my mom couldn't prove, quote, that she was a fit mama while still dealing with homelessness. Fast forward, to the development of our poor people led movement that we call Poor Magazine, which was a whole long story. I wrote a book called Criminal Poverty, Growing Up Homeless in America. But I say that to say it was a big story. It was not a bootstrap story. Bootstraps is a capitalist lie. It was poor people coming together, working interdependently and supporting each other that built Poor Magazine. And our first issue of the actual physical magazine was called Homefulness. It was a dream by Mama and me when we were sleeping in a car in deep East Oakland, Wichin. And 23 years later, we're actually building houses and we're living into that dream.
Ah, you're building houses. How many houses have you built?
Well, it's never overnight. And whenever us poor folk try to do something, right?
Mhm.
So the first thing that happened is also because we don't move like colonizers, right? So when the first thing that we did is we no longer got resources from these eugenicist foundations. They pulled all of our money. We had a little bit of grant money for a minute, but because we refused to report on fellow poor people, which they require for those government grants, we actually realized we had to operate a different way. So we started a whole series of education, which we were already doing with each other as poor folks, that was rooted in a theory that we'd created called poverty scholarship, which is very important because we know, and loving you guys as well, as folks who struggled, we have our own scholarship, right? Welfare Warriors and Poor Magazine and Welfare Queens and Poets. We have our own scholarship. It's called the Scholarship of Life. We have survived and we've come up with our own solutions. And so we put out this book called Poverty Scholarship, and it's poor people led theory, art, words, and tears across Mama Earth. And we started teaching folks with race and class privilege about radical redistribution. And we started to build a fund that we later called the Bank of Community Reparations. It literally is supporting over 800 families now in the Bay Area through COVID and with diapers, Poor Mama's Diaper Fund, and hotels, and all of these ways that we have to support each other when we have struggle. But the thing is the first thing that we did is we realized we had to really be free. We had to free ourselves from the capitalist boot of rent, that lie of rent. And that's what leads to the eviction and then the poverty cycle. And in Mama and me's case, that was our story. And so we were able to, in 2011, after my mama had already passed, Iwaye Mama, we were able to acquire through these radical redistributed funds a small part of Mama Earth in occupied Ochin, Oakland, and buy it so that we could unsell it, which we're doing now, and build a total of 13 homes for houseless families. The first
That's
six,
great.
the first 6 units have already been built. Me and my son, who were homeless again before homefulness, are now permanently housed, and along with 5 other elders and families. And then the next 8 units are supposed to go online this year. And it's been honestly 10 years, Pat, because we've got no resources. Poor Magazine is in fact poor. We move slow, but also because this society and this culture and these colonized cities make it very hard for poor people to build self-determined movements. They hit us right with permit fees and these crazy taxes, the things that people lose their homes behind.
So tell us about the CPS sweeps. I know that the government likes to come along and sweep up your possessions. So what's happening with the children now?
Well, so the crazy piece is that fast forward to now, all of the work that we do is absolutely always on the street and with communities in poverty and struggle. One of our projects is called Roofless Radio, ROOF, less. And we go out and support encampments 3 nights a week. And basically, we're constantly in communication and trying to build grassroots street-based media reporters. And 3 of our reporters over this pandemic, when the CDC guidelines says that people should be able to keep their tents so that they actually can shelter in place, these politrickster cities like San Francisco, like Sacramento, has been doing these high-speed sweeps of our bodies when we're out on the street. We don't have the right to belongings. We don't have the right to shelter. How are you going to shelter in place if you don't got a place? But they don't care. And what's occurred now is that not only are disabled elders, and I do want to frame it that way, because people think, oh, those homeless people, like, they're all 20 something, I don't know what, right? I'm talking about 60 and 70-year-old women, most of whom, and men on the street, mostly Black and brown, but several poor white people as well, on the street as elders. And then the otherest biggest growing population are families. Well, in California, do not be seen when your house, to when me and mom were seen, right? In the 90s, the same thing happens now. If you are seen while houseless, the first thing that they do is take your children and say, yeah, you have to prove your quote fitness as a parent, because by the very fact that you're housing insecure means that you're houseless, that you're not a good parent. And the catch-22 impossible vicious nightmare here, Pat, is that there is no housing in San Francisco,
Right.
Oakland, and Sacramento, right?
Mhm.
So you can't ever get back through those hoops. And it becomes that absolute mind, you know what, that system sets up, where juvenile dependency court and the Western therapeutic industrial complex of therapy and the antisocial workers make it impossible to ever be reunited with your own children.
That's terrible. I mean, that is every level of abuse of poor people is going on with these wars, and the poor are just
Thank you.
shameless.
Thank you.
Shameless. And ultimately, it's because they make money by taking those kids, whether it's all the courts and lawyers and mandatory conditions and nonprofits and so-called nonprofits
Yep.
and privatization of all these businesses. Do you have any group in your area who's fighting on behalf of the children being tortured and violated by the Child Protective Service industry?
Well, it's a really funny question, because my mama, again, Ivaye Mama D, because we had dealt with CPS, Child Separation Services, and of course her life, she was very much involved in, quote, in the protection of children, but also the resistance to child separation services. So she started Court Watch back in 1998 as part of Poor Magazine.
Oh,
But fast forward, yeah, and for folks who want to read some of that powerful work, you can go to poormagazine.org. You can also get a copy of Poverty Scholarship, which is available at poorpress.net. And we send it for free. We don't expect people to pay who don't got money. You got something, please kick it down, because we are in fact Poe. But I say that to say the reality is that the war continues and the corruption continues. And we have the blessing right now of collaborating with California Families Rise, Michelle Chan and Shante. And Poor Magazine is going to be launching this project that we are collaborating on called California Families in Resistance. And the reason we're doing that, right, is because the movement to protect parents and children from these child stealers is very, very disconnected and disjointed. We're trying to bring more folks together. Sadly, you already know that all of us poverty scholars also deal with our own struggle to get through our own lives. So sometimes, right, organizing is hard. But we're creating this coalition because if nothing else, what we got to do is come together and then support each other through this resistance.
There are some little pockets of resistance now. beginning to kind of unite. There's the Marianne Godboldo video, which we're going to be showing today. She held off 100 SWAT team and a tank in order to protect her daughter from being taken away by Child Protective Service and put back on a drug called Risperdal. And she was from Detroit, and so Detroit has some activism, but Minneapolis has a couple groups. They're actually have introduced legislation. The African American parents have introduced legislation, and one of the part of that, besides placing the children with their own family instead of strangers and adopters in the suburbs, they're also their bill would make it illegal to take children based on an accusation alone, which is all they do every day. Accusation, no proof, never any proof, just accusation. And that's a really great bill, because this bill actually has some enforcement behind it, instead of just you can't do it, which we know they break the law every day in the courts. But in this one, it says if they do it, they can face time in prison and a fine. So there's actually some consequences for illegal taking of children just because of accusations. That bill hasn't passed, but there's two groups in Minneapolis, St. Paul area. That group with the legislation, another group doing the actual advocacy, helping reunite families, which is what we do in Milwaukee. We do advocacy to help reunite families. We've actually gotten two houses, two-story houses that were given to us to use, not given to us permanently, but just handed over to us to borrow and use. Women and sometimes families who are facing the removal of their children and already had their kids removed. And this is a way they can have some stable housing, and it's free for us and it's free for them. The Catholic Worker Movement gave it to us. And remember, we don't own it. They're just lending it to us, but they pay all the bills, the gas, electric, rent, and we just house the moms. That's what our advocate. It's a fantastic thing that it's so rare to find any allies in our area on the Child Protective Service area. You know, it's really hard because there's over 200 agencies, private corporations getting money through it. So of course they will never, ever do anything. Casa Maria, the Catholic Worker House, is the only other group in Milwaukee like our group that takes no money from government or corporations, and therefore they have the freedom to actually help poor people. So there is some, upbeat happening that are, we're working on doing lawsuits now on behalf of battered women who lose their children, and on the low IQ moms. They take the kids for all these goofy reasons. And so that's something that we're doing here too. So it's good to hear that you're working together with California Families Rise. We're also going to be interviewing Michelle Chan from that group here to for this story. So you can watch this on Monday when it's all put together. So do you have anything else you can tell us before we have to say goodbye here?
I would just first of all say that as poor people, as poor mamas, we have our own solutions. I think that sometimes there's this, what I call talking about us without us.
Right. Nothing about us without us. That's our slogan.
That's what's up. And the reality is we love welfare warriors, by the way, and big ups to y'all. And we love Casa Maria Catholic Workers. And we'll be going across the country this summer to share the medicine of homefulness. And I just want to put that word out because I want right. Homefulness with one L, homefulness, which is a homeless people's solution to homelessness. How about that? We have our own solutions, right?
Right. Always.
That's right. And that's the name of what we're doing here. Right here at Occupied with Chin, Oakland, Deep East Oakland, an intentionally blighted poor people of color neighborhood. We're taking this land back. We're unselling her, and we're lifting it up for the community. The last thing I would say is, just tune in to Poor People's Radio, because we're actually going to be talking to Pat tomorrow. Actually, it'll be on Tuesday, but we do Poor People's Radio. You can get it online and check us out at poormagazine.org or Poor News Network on YouTube. Also, we're on Instascam and FaceCrack and all that. And we love y'all, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Love you.
We'll see you in the summer.
That part. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye. For sure.
Yeah, great.
All right.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye, hon.